SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
State Treasurer David McRae is returning record amounts of money to Mississippians, whether it's through the College and Career Savings Program or the hundreds of millions in unclaimed money awaiting your claim. Treasurer David McRae says get your applications and claims in today. Treasury.ms.gov.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Was previously recorded.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday Eve. We kick off the program this morning with Jessica Corley, Vice President of Development, Palmer Home for Children. Hey, Jessica.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So start out, Jessica, just for the benefit of our audience that might not be familiar with the Palmer Home for Children. Exactly what is it? What's your mission? What services do you provide? What do you guys do?
Absolutely. So Palmer Home for 130 years has been providing quality care for the most vulnerable of children who come from traumatic situations, are vulnerable, and just need our support and a safe place to call home.
Right. And we're going to be up there for the annual Radiothon, July the 10th. That's an all-day affair. All the shows will be on site at the Palmer Home for Children. That's on SuperTalk Mississippi every year. And, of course, we'll set some financial targets, and we'll try to eclipse those targets. And if we at least achieve them, my partner Rhino here is going to get a new coif, and he's going to lose that beard at least for a year. He'll grow it back for next year. So we're up there on the 10th. How important is that to the Palmer Home for Children?
So grateful for SuperTalk and all the SuperTalk listeners. For 13 years, this has been a largest fundraiser for us and has raised over $3 million for our ministry. So we're incredibly grateful, and it's absolutely vital for our mission.
So in addition to that, we always are fascinated and so pleased to meet some of the Palmer Home families. These are their parents, right, that offer the opportunity for these children to take residence in their home sometimes and take care of them, or they're at the Palmer Home as well. These are people that just volunteer for this.
Yes. In my mind, our caregivers, our house parents, they are all domestic missionaries. They, many of them live on our campus and can have up to 8 children in their home, including their own biological children. And they just show them love, normalcy, stability, provide a safe, loving family for them, and help these children grow to become the best versions of themselves as possible.
Something that the CEO, Drake Bassett, talks about with regularity is that those of us out here in a situation, a typical kind of normal life, if you will, don't have to worry about where our next meal's coming from. But some of these children, before they get into the Palmer Home, that's literally a stressful part and an unknown part of their life.
Exactly. It's heartbreaking, but so many kids come to us struggling with food insecurity. And, you know, we have trauma-informed care and training for our caregivers to know how to help that child overcome that insecurity, how to know that their next meal is coming. It will be provided. Palmer Home, we will take care of them, and that's one less thing they have to worry about and can just be kids. They deserve to just be kids and not have to worry about that. And through our Whole Child Initiative, we see the whole child's story, and we create a plan for each individual child to meet them at their needs, where they've been, what they've gone through, and to make sure that we have a plan in place to provide them with the skills and comfort that they need, especially with food insecurity issues.
Right, and you're so right. No child should have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. I mean, that's pretty fundamental. That's a minimum. And in a country such as ours with such incredible bounty, no child should obviously be left behind in that regard. So what's the goal, Jessica? You guys run into these children that are in some difficult situations, need some help, need that nurturing, that loving upbringing and environment. What's the goal, though, as they advance through their years?
First step is gaining their trust, helping them know that they are safe and cared for, and they can put their guard down, that they don't need to be in survival mode anymore. That's step one. And then we continue to walk through the Whole Child Initiative, and creating an individualized plan for each child so that they can grow and not only survive but thrive. We create education plans specific to them, health plans specific to them, so that they can just be the best version of themselves and have hope for their future, where so many of them did not before. So many of them saw the cycles of their family and their past and did not know there was opportunity out there beyond that. We have so many students who are the first in their family to ever graduate high school this past May, and that was just a beautiful thing to see. And then not only just graduate high school, but go on to trade school or college. And just the confidence and hope that gives them is so, so meaningful. Yeah,
and you've got a long track record of success, does Palmer Home for Children, in that respect, where so many of these children were taken in, just needed that comfort, that security, and that just visibility into their future, knowing that I don't have to worry about where my meal's coming from. I can focus on being a child and getting an education, and then they advance through that, go on to bigger and better things once they're done with the Palmer Home, or certainly done as far as being a child in the Palmer Home. Many of them stay in touch with you, come back.
Oh, yes. Once a part of the Palmer Home family, always a part of the Palmer Home family. In fact, we're one of the rare organizations that see these children beyond 18 and up. So we have our transitional care program where we continue to coach and mentor these kids up until their young adulthood to ensure that they're successful contributing members of our community here in Mississippi.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot about the quality of the services, the care provided in the Palmer Home for Children during their tenure there, if they're willing to come back and still maintain those relationships. Because I've interviewed some of them, and they build these very strong relationships with sometimes their house families, and often it also extends into the staff there at Palmer Home, and they come back and maintain those relationships.
They do. It's a beautiful thing, and we're so grateful for all of our incredible caregivers. We're grateful for our Whole Child Initiative that we've created and launched that not only helps our mission, but other missions throughout the country in trauma-informed care. So just so our audience will know, Jessica, funding for Palmer Home for Children, where does that come from? 100% comes from private donations. So from your listeners, from individuals, organizations, businesses, we receive zero government funding, and that allows us to remain privately funding and independent to care for these children in a holistic, individualized manner and to share the love of God with them at the same time. Yeah, no doubt about it. So contributions are tax deductible to Palmer Home? Absolutely. You can go to palmerhome.org, click on the donate button, or you can email us at development@palmerhome.org, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and share more of the impact you can make through our mission.
How many children do you know off the top of your head there, Jessica, are in your care right now?
Oh, goodness. Somewhere between 30 and 40 right now. It ebbs and flows. You know, we always aim for reunification when it's possible. And so we've got some kids home for this summer, and it may be a temporary thing while mom or dad are working towards getting back on their feet and recovering. So it's constantly changing, but typically between that range. But we serve close to 300 children each year. Okay. I think it was around 268 last year. Gotcha. Because so many kids are in our care beyond our campus. Yeah, absolutely. You know, before we go, one of the things that Rhino and I always observe is lunchtime when the kids come in, often with their brothers and sisters and their house families and caregivers, and they're so polite and they're so excited, they're so enthusiastic. It's just good to see them in a thriving, happy, fun environment, which is what all kids deserve. It's big time. Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Jessica.
Appreciate you all so much.
You bet. We'll see you there in a few weeks. Jessica Corley, Vice President of Development, Palmer Home for Children. Thanks a lot. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This show was previously recorded. This
segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. A little Huey Lewis in the news bumping us into this segment of Middays. We're in the Element Wealth studio, welcoming now Haley Fasackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi. Haley, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Gerard. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to your audience and our customers.
Yes, sir. You bet. And I'm one of them. Yes. And a happy customer as well. So we appreciate all the great work that you and your team do. So you guys have been busy. You're in the process of constructing significant expansion in capacity and transmission to accommodate this unbelievable investment in terms of new economic projects in our state, specifically in Madison County, just a few miles north of our location here. We've got Amazon Web Services slated to build out 2 hyperscale data center campuses. And, of course, critical, essential to that project was your company's ability to meet their electricity demands.
Oh, that's right. Gerard, it is exciting, and it's something I like to tell people. AWS threw us a lifeline at a critical time when we're going to have to make significant investments in serving our existing customers. A third of our generation was set to retire in the next few years. We have to make huge investments to better serve our customers, both reliably and through resiliency due to storms. And this opportunity, thanks in big part from Madison County and the leadership they showed and the governor and others to help bring this, it is happening, though. It is amazing. I drove out there just last week, 5 buildings already vertical, and we've already provided power to them now. And so they're slowly ramping. They're not do that. As you're familiar, it phases in 3 phases over 3 years. So phase 1, their buildings are up. They're putting the equipment in. Phase 2 is under construction on County Line Road, and so a lot. So it's definitely had us busy. We delivered the first substation 2 months ahead of schedule this past December and started ramping power to them in February.
Okay.
The second substation on the Costas property is is under construction now, and the third one back at Canton is also started clearing of that land too. So very busy. We broke ground on the Delta Blues power station in Greenville, and are working through a process to get a power plant approved in Ridgeland right now as well.
Okay, so I didn't realize you guys were already providing power to those buildings.
And a very slow ramp.
Okay,
it's a ramp over time and all that, but they are they are hooked up and slowly ramping up.
Yeah. So.
And providing benefits to customers.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're probably aware that this project proposes 16 buildings total at this point.
Yep.
We think there's going to be a lot more. I know you're aware of that as well. But at least for now, 16 buildings, about 250,000 square foot facilities, each building. There are two different sites. One, as you just mentioned, the Costas property here in Ridgeland, or just north of our location in Ridgeland, across the county line there, and then the other further north in Madison County in Canton, the Canton mega site, 16 total buildings. You guys are investing a bunch, though. I mean, do you know right now, Haley, what the total capital investment will be for new generation and transmission?
Well, this one will just be just over close to $3 billion between all of it.
Okay.
Now, the thing that we're investing, and people need to understand, AWS is paying the incremental cost to serve them. And so the huge benefits that our customers are getting, for example, the transmission lines serving those sites have to be upgraded to larger standards, more resilient standards, improving the flow of power into this metropolitan area. Those substations that have to be built to serve those are being paid incrementally by the customer. They are capital investments in it, but the tariff, the rate that they're paying through that covers those incremental costs, but it creates the economies of scales.
Yeah.
That's going to create the huge benefit to the rest of our customers, and that's a real benefit there at a time where we need to make significant investment to improve service.
Explain that, Haley. A little further, you're aware that there are some who have expressed significant concerns about possible rate increases to just a standard consumer to offset what is, I guess, been reported at least as a significant discount to AWS, that, in fact, the consumers are going to have to pay to offset that discount you guys are selling power to AWS for. Right. Talk about that.
Well, keep in mind, large customers like this, large volume users, they do get a rate discount because of volume.
Yeah.
But their total contribution because of the volume is tremendously great. So keep that in mind. But like a second of all, they do pay the incremental costs, the parts that do not benefit the rest of the customers, to serve themselves. So on top of that, when you get that type of volume coming in, though, the rest of the benefits of that and the costs that they do contribute toward benefiting other customers. The legislation and the requirement the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and the Public Service Commission required is that they cover the incremental costs and provide extra economic benefit to customers.
Okay.
So what we're seeing going forward, they will be providing of the investments we were going to have to make to serve our customers regardless of AWS. They're going to be covering over 50% of that going forward.
Okay.
And so like the Delta Blues plant, and we had to build that. Now with a large customer, they're going to be paying a larger amount of the freight to cover that, which is going to produce that. And so after we see, now rates are going to go up, but we have seen the trajectory of future rate increases cut in half because of AWS's presence going forward on that. And that's going to be the huge benefit providing our customers and allow us to start making the investments to better serve our customers and communities.
So at least one detractor, however, has described the legislation as giving Amazon Web Services essentially a blank check to buy electricity from Entergy. Is that the case?
No, that is not the case. After the legislature passed the legislation, then we knew the parameters and what the law says. Then we sat down to negotiate the contract on these first three phases and these first three phases only. And that's where these parameters were addressed. This is where the incremental cost that they have to pay is addressed, and the benefits they provide to customers through rate stabilities that we're able to give our customers and make those investments. There is talk about could they do more? Yes, they bought plenty of land. Anything beyond that is a separate deal.
Okay.
So there's no blank check. This is tied to those first 16 buildings, and if there's any more beyond that, well, they have to meet the parameters as laid out by that legislation and provide value to all customers.
The Public Service Commission, of course, regulates the energy utility industries in our state, and it's being reported that the PSC has no oversight over this particular project. Explain that for us.
Well, that's the part that makes me a little nervous because that's not true. What's different is they had to speed up the front end part. You know, for this opportunity to come to Mississippi, if it could not have been delivered in 3 years, it was gone.
Yeah,
it was
that's
gone.
right.
So how do you speed up through the permitting and review process? So it granted the convenience of necessity that we need a certificate of convenience and necessity, CCNs, but every project, each substation, each transmission stuff, each power plant, every one of those, as they are completed, they go in front of the commission for a prudency review. The legislation allowed the PSC to hire a third-party independent to review those.
Okay.
If they find anything improper or imprudent, it can be disallowed.
Okay.
Under old processes, we would have that agreed upon and approved before we would go make those investments. Under this process, to accelerate, this prudency has to come on the back end. And so that's a little nerve-wracking. So we're going to have to do a lot of work on the front end to prove and show what we're doing to manage the costs and finding the best processes going forward.
So, Haley, are they bringing in third parties, and did this come about because of just the scale, the magnitude, the complexity of this? It just makes sense to bring in folks with a greater set of expertise to be involved?
Keep in mind, the Public Service Commission is very busy, and their staff are constantly doing their day-to-day work of regulating the retail utilities in the state. So when you bring this extra burden of work in, it provides them additional hands because it is incremental.
Yeah.
Right? These filings will be made that. We also have to provide reporting throughout the year to the staff of the commission on the progress of these projects. So if anything, it provides more oversight. There are lots of projects that have come to this state in different parts of the state. You've never seen anything that has as much scrutiny as this one does. Okay.
The assertion that the legislature repealed Entergy's ability to raise rates by more than 4% per year.
No, that's they did not repeal that. We have what we call a former rate plan. It's performance-based rate making, and at any time during the course of a year, if revenues exceed by 4% the previous year, they go in for a review.
I see.
They are bringing so much revenue in, their revenue exceeds the 4%. And a good example, we had a former rate plan that just went in front of the commission just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Just off of the forecast we're seeing it, for the first time in 6 years, there was not adjustment under the former rate plan.
Can you hang with us another segment?
You bet.
We got a break right now. We got Haley Fasackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This show was previously recorded.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back in the Element Wealth studio. Haley Fasackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi, as our guest. So, Haley, you've seen reports across the country where this massive build-out of data centers, which are, of course, huge consumers of electricity, have caused rates to go up in certain areas. Virginia is one that comes to mind. There's a huge concentration of data centers there. But it looks to me like, on all the research I've done, I want you to comment on this, that the power companies didn't properly plan for this explosion, and now they're kind of caught with their shorts off here.
So true. I mean, this happened so quickly. You know, when we first started talking to AWS 7 years ago, it was really just around data storage.
That's right.
And the whole machine learning AI came after that. But you hit the nail on the head. We were not a first mover, but we were definitely we were the second mouse that got the cheese. We were able to see that, and I think the legislation, I know the legislation, the process, and the policies we put forth in there allow us to capture these opportunities, but at the same time do it in a way that truly benefits our customers and our communities and protects them. I mean, this is transformational. It's generational. I mean, just based off, as you know, the $10 billion known it was estimated that nearly $80 million in ad valorem taxes to Madison County. Never mind the fact the investments we're making are going to be in 5 other counties.
That's $80 million a year, folks, by the way.
$80 million a year.
Yeah.
And we're making investments in power plants, solar facilities, transmissions in 5 other counties. And now, not nearly as big, but still incremental ad valorem taxes that are going to be transformational to schools and infrastructure locally. And so it's a real opportunity.
Okay. Well, are you prepared then to say here, Haley, that you don't expect that there will be any significant rate increases, as has been asserted out there in the public as a direct result of this AWS project? As a direct result, no. Rates were definitely going up, but as I said, because of bringing this new customer in the volume, it changes that trajectory. Okay. And so rates will not be higher than they otherwise would have been. Yeah. And because we're dealing with fluctuation, we saw steady increases in our rates since post-COVID because of materials, supply chain, inflation, labor costs, things of that nature. And this past year, finally, we saw that trajectory just change. But as a regulated utility, you can't increase rates without the PSC approving it, exactly. Right? And then this past year, I think I just read not too long ago, you did not request a rate increase. Is that right? That's correct. For the next year. For the next year. So the first time under our former rate plan, it did not. And so, there's lots of things that hit the fuel costs or a dollar-for-dollar pass-through. And so you've seen natural gas prices go up, and that's a significant part of everybody's bill. Nearly 50 cents of every dollar just goes to pay a fuel bill. Okay. So that will cause fluctuation. Weather changes the amount you use that. Taxes, regulations, and material costs. We definitely have seen that. But one benefit that did allow us by this project moving as quickly as it did, in 1 year, we have seen components on power plants increase by 50% because of this nationwide demand for turbines and equipment. And so by moving early, we were able to lock down the supply chain on that and giving huge customers. Because like I said, we were going to have to build this plant anyway. Because of AWS, we're able to move more quickly with it and provide those benefits as well. So it's a huge benefit. We're seeing demand too, though. It's not just data centers. We're seeing onshoring, manufacturing. We're seeing way we use power, electrification. We're a more connected society and world today. We carry devices today. All our homes are all wired up to the hilt with all kinds of stuff, which is a good thing. And every time you hit an app on here, it's generating more use. If you're using AI generated searches, they're going to use 10 times more electricity as normal. So we, the consumer, are changing that too. We could have sat back and said, hey, you know what, so what, we got to make these capital investments anyway, you got to take it, customers. No, we decided, how do we find something transformative that moves the needle and can partner with our customers and communities to help reduce the cost to serve? Okay. In the new investments you're making, Haley, to accommodate, you said you had to do it anyhow, but my guess is the scale of that probably changed once you knew you had AWS coming in, right? So, right. Well, we have to build more hardened facilities, storm resiliency stuff. The incremental things to serve them are going to be the substations, the solar facilities that they require. They want to be served by solar. Yep. Those things are incremental. The power plant that we needed here was going to be needed to serve our customers going forward, because we were retiring units that in the future that had to be replaced. Our customers didn't need all of them, but now they have a partner in them, and we can build them at economy scales here that provide huge benefits to that going forward. Makes sense. It's a real win-win for our customers. So you talked about natural gas. Are you going to power these facilities with gas turbines? I know that's kind of the more common way and more modern way of producing electricity these days, meaning your main source of energy will be natural gas. Is that true? So keep in mind, when any customer is served, they join the grid. Okay. So, yes, we are adding more gas generation. We're adding solar. We have nuclear on our system.
All of those things are in that, and it's in a pool, and you pull from that pool to meet your needs. So, yes, the incremental investments we're making are in some gas units, solar facilities. We had the opportunity to also acquire additional output out of Grand Gulf that belonged to one of our sister companies under a sharing agreement.
Yep.
That's been turned over to Mississippi, and we picked up that incremental load there. We have a partnership with Cooperative Energy, helping us meet some of the capacity as we ramp up and build our new units. So it's a real partnership there and doing that as well to make sure we're protecting customers and meeting the needs to grow.
So if the president's policies do affect the way it is expected, we might see the price of natural gas continue to decline, which would be good for the cost of generating electricity. Is that true?
You know, it's interesting. I thought, if you look at, I think you're going to have upward pressure, Gerard, if you think about it, because there's so many gas units being built all over the country right now. LNG facilities are being built and upgraded. Our sister companies in Texas and Louisiana are serving two of the largest LNG facilities that are going through massive expansions to export natural gas. So I think it is going to have some pressures. However, I was at a conference just a few weeks ago, and the head of Occidental and also some other executives from the gas industries and commodity experts were forecasting what I thought were 50 cents to $1 type increases. Now, that is still some, but I still think of the days in the early 2000s when we saw $10 and $12 in MMBTU. Yeah. Forecasts now are in that $4 to $5 range, okay, which is still up. But the units we're building are more efficient. So the Delta Blues unit is nearly 50% more efficient than the one it's retiring. The one we're retiring is at a 14,000 heat rate. This one is less than 7,000. So you get more output with less gas. So that creates a huge efficiencies and savings to customers, too.
And there's also efficiencies in the IT gear as well. AWS has said, hey, look, because of advances in power draw technology of all this equipment, we're going to be able to install more equipment and still draw the same amount of power, which is good for us because that means more ad valorem taxes and more investment and so forth.
Exactly. I saw where NVIDIA projected that they could see a 90% improvement in efficiencies in those. What you mean is they're going to just be able to put more processors into those.
More
buildings.
dense,
Yeah, that's right.
So concerns that you've heard in the public about solar, talk about that and how that's consuming land and just other issues people have with it.
Well, I've definitely heard that. A lot of people think of it's impacting agriculture, and you're seeing some of that happen. It's starting to plateau somewhat now. I think economics, the big, beautiful bill is going to have a huge impact on that when the production tax credit's there. But so far, what we've been able to do, for at least from our side, serving our customers, is where it makes sense and when customers are willing to pay for that incremental cost. Okay. And that ensures that it's done in the right way. We're still paying the ad valorem taxes, seeking a slight fee in lieu. There's some counties that have been using the full 90% that the legislator granted, so they probably won't see quite that, but at least it comes at the bottom end. But it does provide those benefits. But I think the concern is not as great as people should have, and I think the contracts behind them, the way to build these in a way that's responsible and also to clean up, to decommission them later in life are there.
Still being debated, but are there any provisions, Haley, in the big, beautiful bill that could translate into higher rates for Mississippians and for your customers?
Well, for example, into our forecast under the previous law, you have production tax credits around nuclear, around renewables. The power plants we are building will be using carbon capture capabilities. There's production tax credits for those. There's various supply chains. There's excise taxes if a percentage of your supplies are foreign owned. That's concerning because I appreciate trying to drive onshoring, but right now a lot of the materials come from foreign countries, so those excise taxes could drive our costs up. That's concerning. So we're trying to watch it all. It's still in the sausage making process, and we'll see where it shakes out.
But before we go, when it lands, if that necessitates a rate increase legitimately under our law, you still got to get approval by the PSC, right?
Still has to review. We have to show them why those.
You have to justify it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's outside. That's a normal course of business.
That's just being a part of a regulated utility.
That's right.
Yeah. Haley Fasackerly is the president and CEO of Entergy Mississippi. Thanks for coming in, Haley.
Thanks, Gerard. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.
This show was previously recorded.
Some things can...
This show was previously recorded.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're coming at you from the Element Wealth studio. So, Senator Elissa Slotkin from the great state of Michigan, not a big fan of the big, beautiful bill, it's fair to say. And, you know, we've been talking quite a bit about how it seems like the central theme of the objection by Democrats to the bill is the changes, the health care reforms. So listen to what Senator Slotkin says.
I did a little math. If you're a family of four in Lansing, Michigan, making a total of $129,000 total, and you're on the Obamacare ACA marketplace, your bill will go up by $5,500 next year. That's a 52% increase in your health care bills. If you are Joe and Nancy from Lansing, Michigan, 60 years old, your kids are out of the house, they're grown, you make $82,000 a year total between the two of you, your health care costs, if you're on the marketplace, will go up by $13,000. That is a 197% increase in your health care bills. So what are Joe and Nancy going to do? Are you going to pay for health care if it goes up by 197%? Think of your own health care. No. Joe and Nancy are going to be at risk for being off health care. And the combined cuts between Medicaid and Obamacare and the price of everyone else's insurance going up, we believe that enough people are going to be kicked off that it's going to feel really close to 2010, when the number one cause for bankruptcy in the United States of America was medical debt because people don't have insurance.
So, you know, I've often talked about how these politicians take advantage. That's a bunch of numbers and figures in that discussion, right? And most people just glaze over. And they take advantage of the fact that most people really don't know what she's talking about, except they did key in on, wow, my insurance is going up $7,000 or whatever it was, the first example.
I think it was $13,000.
Okay. So I think that's right. It's a family of four example. She did a family of four, then a couple, then an individual. So, but it lacks context, as the left likes to say. And I'm going to explain it to you. First, you hear those numbers like, where did she come up with that figure? Like I don't remember the exact, like 129,000 or something like that for the family of four. And that kind of triggered a little memory in my head and started doing the research on this yesterday. So here's the explanation. That happens to be exactly 400% of the federal poverty level. Why is that important? Because the way the subsidies are structured in the ACA marketplaces, the so-called Obamacare exchanges, where you can buy coverage and receive a subsidy from the government to pay for it, and it's calculated to limit your out-of-pocket premium cost to a percentage of your income, starting at 100% of the federal poverty level up to 400%. But if you make $1 more than 400%, you lose the subsidy. That's known as the subsidy cliff. is what it's referred to. This is a bit timely because we got Leah coming in from the Mississippi Hospital Association next. But what she's saying is that Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act and then the American Rescue Plan, actually I got them reversed. The American Rescue Plan and then the Inflation Reduction Act, both pieces of legislation that passed early on in the Biden term, they reformed the way the subsidy cliff works. Basically said you can keep buying insurance on the exchanges even if your income is above 400% of the federal poverty level, and we will still limit the premiums to whatever it is, I think 9.5% of your household income. That's what she's talking about. Now, here's the important point. All that expires, by the way. In those two bills, it was passed in the American Rescue Plan, and then it was extended in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's scheduled to expire at the end of this year. Why? Because it passed with the simple majority instead of the supermajority, the filibuster-proof 60 votes in the Senate, and it had to limit it to pass under Elizabeth McDonough, the parliamentarian's rules. Here's the deal. All we're doing here by allowing it to expire, Rhino, is returning to the original Obamacare policies. So now are you saying, Senator Slotkin and your Democrat colleagues, that Obamacare had bad provisions in it?
Sure seems like it.
What a hypocrite. You think she's going to explain this as I just did to the people?
No.
Not no, but hell no. I'm not even sure she can, because if you watch the video, she's reading from a piece of paper that her staff gave her, right?
Yep.
She has no idea. She's just spouting numbers off. No idea the underlying reasons for why that's going to occur. So we're simply returning to Obama-era Obamacare, and they're mad about it. Fox News, SuperTalk News next, then Leah Smith. Stay with us.
This show was previously recorded.
This hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays, live from the Element Wealth studio. Just watching on the screen here in the studio. Looks like the Senate is getting sort of configured there, Rhino, to take a vote, pass the bill. Now, what happens after that when it goes to conference? Who knows at this point? But we're pleased to welcome now Leah Smith, General Counsel and Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the Mississippi Hospital Association. Hey, Leah, thanks for coming in.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, so we're glad to have you. So a lot of provisions in the big, beautiful bill, all 940 pages of it. It did shrink when it came from the House. It was over 1,000 pages. It's now below the 1,000-page mark. But much of the provisions of this bill, outside of all the various tax language, concern health care. And that's something that affects your members, the members of the Mississippi Hospital Association, the hospitals not only in Mississippi, but, of course, across the country. So I'm sure your members, your organization, you're watching this closely, and there's some things you guys are concerned about.
We do have some concerns, and we've been talking to the delegation. And look, I just want to start by saying they've been great. This is my first year on federal advocacy with the Hospital Association, and the number one thing I want to say is our staffers up in D.C. are amazing. They're polite and they do all the right things in that regard, but they're also so knowledgeable. And so we have been back and forth and talking to them. And there have been things that have changed in the bill, even in the Senate, from the Senate Finance Committee language that was really problematic, that have changed since then because of our advice and because of our conversations. So I think the first thing we would want to say is just thank you.
Okay.
Beyond that, we have some different concerns. The bill, really does impact expansion states more. So you've got some
Medicaid expansion.
That's right.
Of which we're not one. There are 10 that have not expanded. We're one that hasn't.
That's right. So those states that have expanded for able-bodied adults, those are the ones that are going to see some real big pinches. But we have some too. And top of the list is our state-directed payment program. So the way that the bill reads currently, which it is changing, I think the parliamentarian right now is looking at handwritten changes. So
it just passed, by the way, in the Senate. It literally just announced.
It did?
What was as drafted just announced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
literally just happened while we're sitting here. I'm watching on the screen.
Well, I'm very hopeful that we're going to be talking about the right provisions because we don't really know. But that being said, what was in the bill about a half an hour ago when I read it?
Okay.
Was some provisions that would take our state-directed payment program rate down from the average commercial rate to 110% of the Medicare rate starting in 2028. That's better than the Senate Finance Committee language, which started that step down in 2027. It's not as good as the House language, which would have grandfathered in our average commercial rate. And just to give you some context, when the state-directed payment program, the MHAP program, really started in 2015, we were pulling in about $500 million out of that program. And when it blew up in 2023, many thanks to Governor Reeves, who instructed the division to look at some new studies and piggyback off of some things going on in Louisiana
and Florida.
Yep. Blew up that program. We're now pulling in $1.5 billion because of the average, commercial rate. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And stepping back down to Medicare is going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars in losses.
Yeah. So just I'll attempt to explain it. Correct me if I don't get this right. But essentially, you got three major payers. Commercial insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, and they don't all pay the same rates for the same services.
That's right.
In general, in that order, commercial pays more than Medicare, which pays more than Medicaid, and many providers, including hospitals, say we actually lose money every time we provide services that are claimed under Medicaid, reimbursed under Medicaid.
That's exactly
below cost.
That's exactly right. And so for years we were under reimbursed for many, many patients. And so what happened in 2023 was really kind of a truing up of even what we had been under reimbursed in the past. And since then, again, thanks to Governor Reeves, we've been able to do things like open service lines, keep the doors open, hire a doctor or do all of those sorts of things. So stepping back down to 110% of the Medicare rate, which is what we would be at because we're a non-expansion state.
Right.
Expansion states would be at 100% of the Medicare rate, is really going to hurt. We do get a runway, which hospitals like. We like to know when things are going to happen. So at least we know we've got until 2028 and then we start stepping down. But it is going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars gone when we are up to $600 million a year in uncompensated care. We've climbed back up to $600 million.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It wasn't too long ago. It seemed like it was 400.
It is climbing and it just continues to go that way.
Okay, so now let's explain this to the folks. Hospitals do receive some money from the federal government. It's called disproportionate share.
That's right.
Shorthand for it is DISH payments is how it's referred to in the industry. And basically, it's when the federal government looks at your patient balance, your payer mix or non-payer mix, and they'll send you some money because you have an outsized amount of Medicare, Medicaid, or uninsured relative to commercial, right?
That's right.
Did I explain that correctly?
You're absolutely correct. And we get about $30-40 million from that. We will lose that beginning this year.
Okay.
Those will be stepped down. There'll be a big reduction there. The House language actually included some provisions that stepped that back to beginning in 2028, so we would have gotten a little more reprieve.
Okay.
So that's another smaller financial hit, is that DISH will begin to go away in September.
All right, so state-directed payments and then DISH payments possibly cut some holes in reimbursement to hospitals, your members. Let's talk about the changes in the provider tax and how that might affect Mississippi.
So less concerning.
Yeah.
And we are grateful for what the Senate did, which is grandfather in our rate.
Right.
So there's a 6% safe harbor in federal law. So federal law already dictates and puts limits on provider taxes. That limit is at 6%. We are about, couple tenths of a percentage point away from 6%. So we are almost to the limit.
Okay.
I think there are some questions about that language and the CMS regs and what will happen if we want to restructure that, for example. And we might need to restructure some things depending on what happens with this big, beautiful bill. We might need to change up some things. And hospitals are very used to that. But so we don't know exactly how that's going to be implemented, but we are very grateful for the grandfather clause. Non-expansion states, not non-expansion states, will see the beginning of a reduction.
They got
in
a
that.
problem.
They've got a problem.
No doubt.
0.5% to 3.5% is where they end. So they're kind of getting hit from all sides.
Yeah. And so let's just explain this to the audience that might not be familiar with provider taxes. These are just taxes levied at the state level on healthcare providers. The state collects money from them, essentially, which gives states then more money to tap more federal Medicaid dollars.
Correct.
And so what the federal government's saying is you guys are kind of gaming this thing here. You're getting money from the private sector to take more money from the federal government. And they're saying they're putting an end to that. Not an end to it, but they're restricting it somewhat and reducing it.
It's been interesting. I mean, we've heard terms like gimmick and scheme and things like that. I mean, I think the way we view it is we have voluntarily chosen to be taxed.
Yeah.
So that way the money does not come from the general fund. That way, that money that would have otherwise come from the general fund can go to fund other things in Mississippi that need to be funded. Hospitals are willing to tax themselves to the tune of about $475 million in order to pull down federal money that frankly, accounts for uncompensated care that we're required to provide.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the problem. I know you're a free market guy. I like the free market too, and we just don't exist in that.
I know. I agree with that.
I know. I've heard you talk about it before, but with EMTALA, we are required to screen and treat any patient that comes through to our ER. And that costs money. And a lot of Mississippians, a lot of working Mississippians don't have insurance. I talked to a hospital CEO not too long ago who saw 11, he used these stats, he saw 11 people come through the ER. 9 of them were working, and there were people working in his community. It was Louisville, actually, a small community. So I mean, he knows these people. He knows that they have jobs and they're just trying to make ends meet, and they don't have insurance. And he's got to screen and treat them, and he wants to screen and treat them because they're people that go to church with him and shop at the grocery store and whatever else. So.
And many workers in Mississippi, we don't have a lot of large companies that typically offer health insurance as part of their compensation and their employment package. There's lots of small, mid-sized businesses that find it cost prohibitive.
That's right.
And just don't offer it. So they're on their own, essentially. So they're working, but they don't have access to commercial insurance through their employer.
That's right.
Which is where most people in this country get their insurance.
That's right. I've never experienced not having insurance. I can't imagine how taxing that would be on a family, and it's draining hospitals. I mean, it really is. It's a very difficult situation that we're in.
Yeah, it is.
Which is part of the reason why the exchange has been so important.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the next segment. We've got Leah Smith, General Counsel and Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the Mississippi Hospital Association in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back.
This show was previously recorded. This show was previously recorded.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
right, the Queen of Soul bumping us into this segment here, the great Aretha Franklin. Leah Smith, General Counsel, Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the Mississippi Hospital Association, is our guest in the Element Well studio. So the House leadership just announced after the Senate, we just learned, passed a big, beautiful bill. Rhino, you told us there were 3 nays: Collins, Paul, and Johnson. Is that right? Oh, Tillis, right. Pardon me. Johnson, he came around. How could I forget Tillis? Because he's been all over the news having opposed the legislation, and the president lit into him, and then he said, okay, I'm not running again.
That's right. That's right.
He kind of solved that problem. All right, but we're just looking at now the announcement coming from the House side, Leah, is that we think we got a deal that they can get through. That's what House leadership, that was just put up on the screen here. So
well, I'll tell you what, this is my first time on SuperTalk, and I came at the exact wrong time because the bill is changing like every 5 minutes. So
I know, and you and I were talking
working
about
with it.
I know, but this something that's important in Mississippi is a rural hospital stabilization fund. Explain that. We're not sure where that landed right now. There was a difference in the House and the Senate version. There was some discussion about that. I'm not sure if the parliamentarian had to get involved in that one or not. So talk about that.
I would love to, and I'll talk about the parliamentarian separately. That's been so interesting to learn about the bird rule and the bird bath and all of that sort of stuff. But you know, with this rural hospital transformation fund, we were so glad to see it included. It's so important for a state like Mississippi that, you know, pretty much all of our hospitals are considered rural in one way or another, and will benefit. Many of them will benefit from this fund. You know, the major problem with it. The House, I think, recommended $15 billion. The Senate landed on $25 billion when they got through the Senate Finance Committee. I had read 30 minutes ago that in an effort to appease Senator Collins, they were moving to $50 billion. Now, maybe that didn't get through, and that's where the no vote came from. So I'm not really sure. But the major issue is it's a one-off program. So, I mean, the way that it's going to work under the $25 billion scenario is it's $10 billion in 2028, $10 billion in 2029, $2 billion the next 2 years, and then $1 billion. And then it's gone. And I think that this is something that our CEO, Richard Robertson, has talked about with you before. But one of the challenges, like any business, is you have to be able to plan.
Sure.
And I think hospitals keep getting the rules changed. There's a new program. There's an old the program's going away. The program's coming online in 5 years. You know, there's no way to hire a doctor and say, all right, we're going to keep you for 4 years, and then in 2032 or whatever, we're going to have to let you go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a good business practice. And so I think what we have tried to advocate for is pick a program and let's just stay with it. Let's just stay with whatever we're going to do, and that way we know what we need to budget for. And the off ramps are helpful. Knowing these extended time frames are helpful, but we have to be able to plan, and that just hasn't been has not been in the cards for hospitals across the nation, really, but, you know, Mississippi.
The House proposed $15 billion.
Okay.
The Senate amended that to $25 over 5 years.
That's right.
Susan Collins, who, Rhino, you just informed us was a nay vote, she wanted $100 billion.
Okay.
Is what she wanted. So I'm thinking that maybe she opposed the bill because it didn't get to the $100 billion that she wanted.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
I did read a stat this morning from the National Rural Health Association. I've not vetted it, but it said that we're only going to make up 43% of what rural hospitals are going to lose under the bill in Mississippi with the $25 billion. So, you know, with the state-directed payment losses, with the DISH payment losses, with the health insurance exchange issues.
Let's talk about that. Keep going, but let's just get to that.
Yeah, I just, you know, all of those things collectively are going to be a really big hit over time.
Okay.
And that's the issue. But look, grateful for it. Glad it made it in there. The conversations really started about a week ago. We've been sending correspondence almost daily to staffers and our senators, and we got word that there might be a fund, and we were very grateful for it. So we're glad it's in there.
So how do the hospitals tap that fund? How do they qualify for that? What's the process? I'm sure it's arduous at best.
Well, it probably is, and that was one of our concerns, is that many of these sort of one-off programs have a lot of hitches, and we're just going to have to see how that shakes down in regulations. I do know the way that it's going to be allocated is half is going to be allocated to the states just equally, and then half is going to be based on CMS discretion. We are not big fans of that. Okay. We would like for Congress to say what's rule, so that way we know that Mississippi is going to be included, because how could almost all of our hospitals not be included?
Right.
And so we would prefer not to give that to the agency discretion, but right now half the fund is left to the agency. So we don't know details other than that.
Okay. So we were talking about EMTALA. Of course, I always remind the audience this was passed and signed into law by Ronald Reagan. A lot of people don't realize that. Right. The Emergency Medical and Labor Treatment Act. I think I got it right.
Yeah.
Yes. Bottom line is, if you show up at the ER and there's some sort of urgent medical condition, or you're in labor, the hospital is required to stabilize the patient, essentially,
and transfer them or do whatever they need to do.
Yeah. And back in the old days, I've researched this extensively. They dump them on the public county hospitals where the care, honestly, was subpar.
Right.
But they'd get them out of the better private hospitals. And that's a requirement if they, I believe, participate in Medicare, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So to stay in the program. So it's the only industry I know of where you're required to deliver services to someone even if they can't pay. There's really none other. So on that basis, I've said it many times on the show, we really don't have a free market in healthcare until an ER could say, oh, can you pay? Well, if you can't pay, I'm sorry, we can't take care of you.
That's right.
That doesn't happen in this country. Doesn't happen in Mississippi.
That's exactly right. And you know, I would say I've worked with the hospitals for 5 or 6 years in my previous role with the lieutenant governor, but I've worked with them so much more closely, and I can definitively say they want to care for people.
Sure.
I mean, it's not as if when people walk into an ER, they want to leave them desolate. They want to help them. They also want to keep the hospital open. And they want to keep service lines that are needed in the community open, and they want to recruit a new physician to care for more. They want to do all these things. So it is. It's very difficult, and it is not a free market, and that's why things like CON still exist, which we might talk about later, but and will likely come up again next year, and we are in favor of reform. But in order to get rid of things like that, we also have to exist in a true free market, because otherwise we don't have the payer mix that supports keeping a business open that's underwater.
I understand.
And in 2023, we really saw a situation. I mean, I was actually on the campaign trail in 2023. So imagine being on the campaign trail and having to answer questions about hospitals that are failing. You know, thank goodness that was remedied in the fall with enhanced MHAP, and that's all good. But on the campaign trail, it was hard to answer those questions. You know, how are we going to save the hospital in my community? And hospitals are changing. I have been so impressed with how open our hospitals are to talking about their business models, or how they can work together, or how we can share information and reduce costs. But we're the lowest cost in the nation. I mean, that is the truth. We are the lowest cost in the nation, and we're about mid-range related to care. So we are providing excellent care at a very low cost. It's a revenue issue.
And so the reason I brought this EMTALA issue up, and you did a great job of expanding on that, was because of what you pointed out earlier in our discussion, that just a large number of uninsured
That's right.
In our population. And it's likely that number is going to be boosted with these reforms that are coming out of the bill. One of those reforms that would affect Mississippi, of course, is that the enhanced subsidies in the ACA marketplaces, the exchanges, those expire at the end of this year. I just researched this a couple of weeks ago. I was a little shocked to learn that the ACA enrollment in Mississippi just as it has across the country, is increased substantially to like over 300,000.
Yes.
330,000, I think, is the last figure I saw, of which 270,000 received some sort of credits, of subsidies from the federal government for that coverage. But it is expected that many will drop their coverage because they'll have to come out of pocket with more when the enhanced subsidies are terminated or expired at the end of the year. And that could, again, bolster our uninsured population, which could be a problem for hospitals, could it not?
Absolutely. It's a huge problem. I mean, they're not going to be able to pay. And if they have the insurance, it's junk insurance because they can't afford the out-of-pocket cost.
We got a break right now. If you can hang around, we'll continue this discussion.
Happy to.
All right. We got Leah Smith, General Counsel, Vice President for Policy and Advocacy with the Mississippi Hospital Association.
This show was previously recorded.
Bring it on. Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So we went to break, Leah. We were just talking about how we might see the roles of uninsured shrink from losing the enhanced subsidies in the Affordable Care Act. Now, the latest estimates by the CBO are that some 12 million or so are going to lose coverage from all the various reforms, Medicaid, Medicare, and, of course, the ACA exchanges. But Mississippi, there was a time period where kind of 100,000 was sort of the average per year. But with the enhanced subsidies and I think more insurers participating in our exchanges, and probably more importantly, and let you talk about this, more providers are now in network and accepting, the coverage sold on the exchanges. For a while, you could get coverage, but you had to pay out of pocket before you left the doctor's office or the hospital or have some other arrangement and then get reimbursed.
It was essentially junk insurance.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And so providers didn't want to participate.
Well, that's improved a lot.
It is totally improved, and I think the pandemic really had a huge impact in that. I mean, not only did the subsidies occur because of the pandemic, but also I think people got really interested in their health care. Yeah. And they got interested in the ways that they could pay for their health care. And this came along. I think government started paying attention to the exchange. Right. Yep. That's why we saw so much talk of it in 2024 when we were going through some of the Medicaid expansion debates. I mean, the exchange was a huge part of that. The subsidies were a huge part of that. So I think letting it go is going to be hard on Mississippians. It's going to be hard on hospitals. 24 million nationally enrolled, last I checked at KFF, in the exchanges. Wasn't too long ago, it was 10 million. That's right. That's right. 7-8 years ago, it was 10 million. Which I think is shows that people want to take care of their health care. None of us want to go to the doctor and not be able to afford it. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to people who have been either on Medicaid and kind of been looked at a different way, or have not been able to pay for their health care. And it's an embarrassing, it's a thing that you don't want to happen to you when you're trying to take care of things in your life. So I do think that there are working people in Mississippi that want to find a way, even if they're cost sharing, even if the cost sharing goes up a little bit. Which is planned in the bill, right? For Medicaid. That's right, for Medicaid. But, on the subsidies, I'm wondering if there would be room for, taking down, for example, you were talking about 400% of the federal poverty level. That might be too high. Yeah. That may be too high for subsidies. Maybe we take that down a little bit. Maybe we increase cost sharing a little bit. But to just do away with them, I think would be really problematic, not only for hospitals, but for patients.
Yeah, and that's something else, the cost-sharing subsidies that, the president has sought to reduce. And then what happened is all the insurers sort of restructured their plans around that so that there would be less out-of-pocket costs, right?
That's right.
So they could get premium reimbursement.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a big change. It's a big change.
All right, so what are hospitals doing? I mean, you represent the Hospital Association. What are you guys doing to kind of prepare for all these changes? Because it's a lot, as we've talked about here.
It is a lot. I think that we are going to have to see what ultimately passes, which looks like it could be fairly quickly here, which surprises me, actually. I thought there would be more maybe debate in the House. It's going to take some time, maybe a year, to roll out CMS regulations on all of these things.
Got to code it.
So we're going to have to, that's exactly right. So we're going to have to figure out, what that means, for example, in terms of our provider tax. Can we restructure?
Yeah.
Are there things we can do even within that limit that we're going to be grandfathered in at? And then our hospitals are very aware, even with the state-directed payment program enhancement that happened in 2023, they were very aware that that could go away at any moment. So they have.
But isn't it? I don't mean to interrupt you, Leah, but isn't it fair to say that maybe some hospitals, particularly our rural hospitals, were on the edge and may not have survived without that?
100%. I mean, we had 3 or 4, and this is just from knowing health policy, being on the campaign and not being with MHA. There were 3 or 4 hospitals that were on the brink of shutting down. Even our larger systems were struggling. Service lines were closing. We had other big issues like Greenwood and places like that that were really struggling, and they were really helped out by the enhanced MHAP. So and they're doing fine. Hospitals are doing okay right now in Mississippi.
Okay.
And they're adding where they need to. They're adding a service line. They're partnering together. I just saw not too long ago that Tyler Holmes, for example, has partnered with Baptist to add cardiovascular services. Okay. So that is one thing they're doing. They're figuring out how to cut costs, how to work together to provide services, share workforce, share information. That has been a really big thing at MHA. We are trying to figure out how to leverage AI, health information, so that we can be efficient in transfers, for example.
Okay.
So that we can identify, for example, patients who are going to the ER more than 4 times a year and redirect them somewhere else, so that they are getting general health care and they're not showing up in the ER for a flu situation.
Sure.
And we can do all of these things with technology. We're building a lot of that out. But I think that hospitals have always known that the average commercial rate was fragile, that it could go away. And I think for that reason, they have planned accordingly. They haven't been spending or acquiring or trying to add where they might have to completely cut in a couple of years. But still, it's a blow, and it's going to be hard on hospitals.
What are you going to be talking to the legislature about this coming session?
So, I think the payer mix is always at issue. There might be some other creative ways we could deal with that. And I've had some broad conversations with Chairman Creekmore about this and Chairman Bryan. I think that CON is back on the table. I think we'll probably see a bill kind of like what was vetoed this year because of the one issue with one hospital. We would like to see that bill go a little bit further. We liked the House version that allowed hospitals to do things like dialysis. If we are going to require hospitals to see and treat patients that can't pay, we should also allow hospitals to perform services that typically do pay. And not only that, but it's good for patients to have a choice. If they want to stay in their hospital with their other providers to receive that treatment, then they should be allowed to do that. And right now, they can't.
So what's the official position of MHA on CON reform in general? I mean, are you for complete repeal of all CON or limited? Tell us about that.
So with the payer mix issues, we feel like CONs need to remain intact in some form because we don't have the benefit of having all patients that pay.
Okay.
But having said that, we believe in reforms, and we worked closely with Chairman Creekmore and Chairman Bryan on that bill. We worked closely with Kevin Blackwell. For example, the CapEx expenditure thresholds are too low.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's $1.5 million on equipment
to pave a parking lot. That's ridiculous.
Or buy a piece of healthcare equipment. We
have
far exceeded $1.5 million.
Sure.
We should have had a growth rate in there. We do to some extent, but it has been applied in sort of a wonky way. And so we believe that we need to raise that and add a growth rate for clinical, non-clinical, and for medical equipment. We are fully on board. We also believe in a level playing field.
Okay.
So everybody needs to play by the same rules, and right now we don't necessarily
have the House bill you guys were in support of.
Oh, yeah.
That came out this year.
We in fact liked the original version of the House bill that kind of went a little bit
further reform. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, that's going to be a big topic again in this session.
I think it will. Talk to Chairman Creekmore about it the other day.
And perhaps it will include even additional reform as well.
You never know.
Okay. But your members are okay with that.
We are always willing to look at reform. We know that things don't need to remain stagnant.
Well, a whole lot of folks in white coats show up, as you know, in those committee meetings that oppose it.
You would be surprised. I mean, we really didn't have a lot of opposition to the bill that was at issue this year.
Okay.
And I think that's just because we all worked it out and talked about it in advance, and we knew that there wasn't going to be wholesale repeal because we're still dealing with that payer mix issue. And we know that
we'll work on that.
It might be on the table at some point.
But Senator Bryan doesn't seem to be in favor of anything.
You know what? He was fully in favor of the bill that he and Sam Creekmore negotiated together. And he was great about it. I think he understands that. I'm not going to speak for him, but I think we all understand that a threshold of $1.5 million, for example, on medical equipment is going to change over time.
That's a no-brainer.
It has to.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's an easy one, though.
That's right.
But I think we can go further than that. Don't you?
We will definitely be working on it.
We'll keep talking about that. I appreciate you coming in, Leah. Enjoyed it. Thank you a lot.
Me too.
Yeah. Leah Smith, General Counsel and Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the Mississippi Hospital Association. She's been our guest in the Element Well studio, another segment in this hour. And then in the afternoon portion of Middays, it's Aaron Rice, founder and CEO of American Dream Legal.
When the clock strikes 12, we'll cool off and start rocking around the clock again. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
This show was previously recorded. This show was previously recorded.
Gerard Gibert, going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Stevie Wonder. Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of Middays. Don't forget, tomorrow it's Scott Sands filling in. I'll be down on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast speaking to the Harrison County Republican Club. Looking forward to that. Whitman College. Oh, my gosh. The president officiates an anti-Trump lesbian wedding featuring a husband. Oh, my gosh. Yes, indeed. President Sarah Bolton officiated the nuptials of Lita Bacchus, a non-binary lesbian, at which I-do's and dyke rings were exchanged. Oh, my gosh. At Whitman's Olin Hall. And you won't be surprised. And I know people are going to get mad because I'm stereotyping these two based on their physical appearance. It's purple hair all over the place. The wedding dress code that was stated on the invitations included dyke decadence. Oh, man. And instead of gifts, they asked for donations to LGBTQIA plus causes. Many in the local young punk and queer scene were in attendance. Oh, my gosh. In addition, dykes are sacred. Dyke love is holy. And Sapphic, what is that? S-A-P-P-H-I-C. Sapphic saints were written across a pair of pews in the hall, and the bridesmaids sprinkled dental dams. What? In lieu of flower petals. What the heck is all this stuff? Please unravel the mysteries of this lesbian culture for me.
Sapphic is ancient Greek. It's basically the ancient Greek way to say woman love.
Okay.
Dental dams are a prophylactic for sexual acts performed by lesbians.
I got you. I thought it was probably
trying to think
something
of the most radio appropriate way, but the name dental dam should give you a clue as to what is involved in the act.
Yep, I get it. Well, again, I don't care what you do. I just share that with you. These are adults, and this is why we have to insert this in the college communities. Why they're so obsessed with it, I don't get that, honestly. I really don't. But they decided to do that at Whitman College. So, there you go.
Because for the longest time, if you were a boring person and you wanted attention, you could just say you were homosexual, but that became passé and mainstream, so now you have to claim you're non-binary.
Yeah.
And that's becoming passé and mainstream to those that buy into the nonsense, so now you got people that are just coming up with all kinds of other nonsensical ways to make themselves interesting instead of being their normal, boring selves.
So there's somebody on the text line that's talking about Waltz, the representative from Florida that was tapped by Trump to be the national security advisor. Is it Mike? I think is his first name. Yeah. He says he wasn't removed from that position because of the signal chat. Trump said he took responsibility, and that was that at the time. He was removed because Trump found out he was working with Netanyahu on ways to convince Trump to carry out a preemptive strike on Iran. Okay. I don't know that I've seen any empirical evidence of that being reported. The leak was an intentional move by Waltz to add known Middle East hawk Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat to discredit Hegseth and try to get him out. It could have been. I don't really know. All I know is that in terms of our discussion about the comparison between that event and other things that have happened since Donald Trump's been in office and the prolific, profound, egregious cover-up of Joe Biden and virtually every day and everything about him, I just don't think there's a comparison there. There's a huge gap in the two. So Chris in Tupelo says, no wonder that Lloyd Austin not being able to be reached and no one being told that he was undergoing a procedure was treated so sympathetically. It hit too close to home. So that's the same deal, though. I mean, the guy's Secretary of Defense, and again, was undergoing a procedure to have his prostate removed after a prostate cancer diagnosis and was out of pocket and nobody knew anything about it. I'd say for a person in that position, that's a big problem. They should have told us what's going on. And I still think that's the case, but it may all be part of the MO of the Biden administration. It's just one big dang cover-up. We're out of here today. I'll be back with you on Friday. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
This show was previously recorded.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer. Send a letter on a long summer day.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, hour 2 of the program from the Element Well studio on this
Friday Eve.
Welcome now, Bob Getty, the host of Super Talk Eagle Hour. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Gerard, how are you? Good morning to you.
I'm doing fantastic. So are USM and William Carey, man. The Pine Belt represented well in postseason play in college baseball. USM, of course, in the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. They had a good outing yesterday, did they not?
Well, I tell you, Gerard, if you like pitching, they did. It was 0-0 going into the 8th inning against Coastal Carolina, and we were all breathing a little hard, to be honest with you. But fortunately, the Golden Eagles responded, scored 5 runs at the bottom of the 8th inning, and then held off Coastal in the top of the 9th to secure a really important, we believe, first-round win. I'm at the ballpark right now, and Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State are playing in the losers bracket game based on results yesterday. Great game, 3-2 here in the 5th inning. Gerard, I know you're a baseball guy. I got to tell you, man, there's just no place in the world like being at a baseball tournament at this time of the year. It's just wonderful.
It is, man. It's awesome. I do miss it. I know you're enjoying it. And, of course, we got our Sports Talk boys over at the SEC tournament. You know, Bob, what I have observed in my decades now being around the game of baseball is that these guys can play. It doesn't matter what the level is, man. These folks can play. I'm telling you, there ain't a dime's worth of difference between these athletes. They may play in different divisions. They're all pretty dang good.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think you could take the top-tier Sun Belt Conference baseball teams, and they could go compete with any team and any league in the country. And that's the great thing about college baseball, as you know, Gerard. Anybody can beat anybody on a given day, and it all seems to begin and end on the pitcher's mound. Would you agree with that?
Not only do I, but to your point, you look at the outing USM had yesterday on the mound there. You put that performance against any team in the country, they probably win. That's the point. The one against the one at any level is competitive.
No, there's no question about that. And it was a great pitcher's duel yesterday. You know, when you see a game like that and you got 2 kids going pitch 7 full innings, you just hate to see either one, in a sense, lose because they've just given everything they got.
Yeah.
And it was a great performance yesterday. We got a good pitcher's duel going on right here, 3-2 late in this ball game. So Sunbelt baseball is very, very exciting, and the Golden Eagles play this afternoon at 4:30. An old rival. They're going to play Troy for the 4th time this season. All 3 games earlier in the year were an absolute dogfight. I would expect nothing less this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one there. So, and I noticed also that Southern Miss is now ranked. Is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, they're 25th in 3 of the 4 major polls, and they're 38-17 now on the season. Here's a remarkable stat, Gerard, about Southern Miss, and Rick Cleveland pointed this out in an article that he published last week. Southern Miss lost 70% of its roster last year to graduation and in the major league draft. 70%, and here they sit at 38-17. A remarkable job, I think, by first-year coach Christian Ostrander. I think Christian Ostrander is the perfect man to carry on the legacy of Scott Barrett.
Yeah, I think you're right. That absolutely looks like the case. So the drama, the dramatic fashion in which the game was won, My understanding is there was some, contemplation over what to do in that situation, whether or not to give the hit away sign. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They now picture this: you've got a guy on base. It's 0-0 in the bottom of the eighth. Your guy at the plate has got a 3-0 count. Now he's Slade Wilkes. He's had an all-conference year. They gave him the go-ahead sign on 3-0, and he put one up against the wall out in left center field. Then the Golden Eagles hit a 3-run home run after that, but it was Slade Wilkes with a 3-0 sign, 2 outs, bottom of the eighth. They give him the go sign, and he delivers. So that's another great thing I think about baseball. There's so many different ways to think out individual plays, and there's so much strategy. And I know that's probably one of the reasons you love the game too, Gerard.
Yeah, I do. And to your point there, obviously at a much lower amateur level, I've been in that same situation, and you got a guy you have confidence in at the plate. You got 3-0. You're not really generating any offense. You're thinking, well, you don't get too many fastballs that you can get when you got somebody mowing them down on the mound. We're going to take a little risk here. And, of course, you know what happens, Bob, is you give the hit away, and it works out, and you get on base. Well, you're a genius. But if you give it and you get a pop-up on the infield, what do you do that for? That's how it works.
You're all sure. That's 1,000% right. In this case, though, it was the right decision. You had a freshman coming up behind Slade Wilkes. He's your senior that's led you all year. And, as they said in the post game, we have a lot of confidence in Slade, and he came through. So, yeah. But you're right. You pop up on the infield, and everybody's screaming, what is Oz thinking? It was 3-0.
Exactly. Oh, man. But that's what's so neat about the game because, he's about an eighth of an inch off on the bat from that being in the gap somewhere is what that usually means. Oh, man.
100%.
That's 100%. So much fun, though. So do you like Southern Miss proceeding through the tournament and winning this thing?
Well, I think they have a really good chance. They're a real gritty team, and they're used to winning. They don't quite have the pitching depth that they had last year. They've lost 2 of their projected starters and one of their main relievers this year to injury. They had 5 kids drafted last year on the pitching staff after their junior year. So they're not as deep pitching-wise as they were the last couple of years. I think it's important to win the game today and stay in the winner's bracket as opposed to falling in the loser's bracket where now then you got to play a lot of baseball games, and I'm not sure that that's where they want to be. I'm pretty confident that they would prefer to win today, play Saturday morning, and then play in the championship game Sunday. Yeah. As we speak, Gerard, Coastal Carolina just hit a home run over the right field wall and tied this game 3-3.
So wow. Awesome.
To go back to what you're saying, it's so competitive, and anybody can beat anybody. It's a great sport.
No doubt about it. And, of course, the tournaments are endurance tests, who's got the arms that could get them through that deal.
100%. That's Louisiana appears to have the deepest pitching depth. But figure this, Gerard. They got beat 7-3 yesterday by Old Dominion, who had to play a play-in game to get in the tournament, and Louisiana's the number 1 seed.
Wow!
So you just never know. You just never know.
And then, of course, Bob, we got to talk about William Carey going back to the NAIA World Series again, second year in a row. What a great program that is!
What an outstanding accomplishment to make it to the College World Series 2 years in a row. You just can't say enough about Bobby Halford. I think he's been there 29 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Just a great man, does a fantastic job with that program, and very happy to say that our Hattiesburg station will be carrying all their games. We're big partners and supporters of William Carey, but I don't need to tell you, Gerard, what an accomplishment is to make
unbelievable.
Series 2 years in a row.
Great program, disciplined program, always competitive, and it seems like they're always in the postseason, man. And here we are 2 years in a row in the World Series. Unbelievable accomplishment. It's a destination program, as you know, Bob. A lot of players want to go there for that experience and that opportunity.
Well, there's no question, and I think what you said at the start of this segment is so right. At every level, it's hard to compete because you have a lot of competition for, obviously, and for William Carey to accomplish what they've had just says a world about that program. And in a sense, they play in sort of a shadow in Hattiesburg, of course, with all the success that Southern Miss has had, but take nothing away from the Crusaders, man. They're something that they're a program that everybody in the state of Mississippi, Gerard, should be proud of.
Absolutely. Baseball juggernaut, college baseball juggernaut for sure. Well, Bob, we got to go, but I know you guys are going to have a good tournament. We are cheering on the Golden Eagles, and I'm so pleased that we're going to be carrying the broadcast for William Carey as well. That's neat.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Gerard. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Okay.
This show was previously recorded. The
talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, the eagle's been flying slow, and the flag's been flying low, and a lot of people saying that America's fixing to fall. But speaking just for me, and some people from Tennessee, we got a thing or two to tell you all.
Armed Forces Museum at the heart of Camp Shelby. And we welcome now Kelthum Rowland. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, correct. Bonjour.
Okay. Bonjour to you. Also, Margaret Chance and Barbara Broom, Gold Star families. Kelthum, start with you. Tell us your connection to the Armed Forces Museum and to these Gold Star families.
Well, I'm Kelthum Rowland, and I am the Honorary Consul of France for Mississippi, and I am here, representing France to express my thanks, my gratitude to the families of Sam Bondell for his sacrifice in World War II.
Awesome. Margaret, tell us your story.
Well, our uncle, S.B. Dale Jr., was killed in World War II over France, July 4th, 1944. He was a pilot, and he was shot down over a small village in France, and we were privileged to go. Kelthum went with us and translated for us, but this little village in France invited us to come to a ceremony there because they wanted to honor him and put a plaque on the wall of their town hall honoring his service. They were so grateful for his service that Barbara and my husband Tony and I went, and Kelthum accompanied us and translated for us and helped us through the ceremony. But it was because they were so appreciative of his sacrifice.
Sure.
In World War II.
Yeah, they called him, kept calling him the American hero, Mm-hmm.
Barbara?
As she said, this was an incredible trip that we took. And the incredible thing was, how did they find us?
Yeah.
It was through a Facebook post. And my daughter intercepted the post and sent it to me, and they were just looking for the family. And we contacted Kelthum to verify all the information, and then we heard from the mayor and got an official invitation. And so we made our plans, and here we Mississippi girls are in Paris.
And so when did this occur?
2018.
2018.
It was the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day, and it was a big celebration in Europe. Everyone, the newspapers, the media, and everyone was celebrating, and so that's why they scheduled that ceremony on that day.
And I assume that a good number of the townspeople were on hand and attended the celebration?
Yes, all French.
Yeah.
And thanks to Keltoum and our newfound friend Loic, the young researcher and historian who also was involved in all this information, helping us to gather. He's the one who found the plane, sent us the wreckage, pieces of the wreckage of the plane.
Now, is that how they came to, I guess, publish the information on Facebook? Was it due to the location and identification of the plane itself? Did they do some research and figure out who was on board?
Do you know, Kelton?
About
how did they connect? Did the plane have was it a factor, I guess, in determining their family members' connection to this event, to this situation?
No, they had his name, and so they went on Facebook, on social media, and put, Dale, and so they reached out, not to you, correct? They reached out to your daughter.
And she sent it to me and said, I think this is for you.
Wow.
And so we jumped at the chance. It was something we never imagined. We had no information about what happened to him other than he had been killed and was buried in Normandy. So we went, and like I said, resulting in all this information that we gathered and documented in these books and this display.
So the town, is it fair to say then, was searching for your family members? And they were wanting to honor them.
Mm-hmm. About 200 people in that little village. We have to call it a village. It was near Evre.
Evreux, yes.
Evreux.
Did you translate for them?
Yes, I did, yes. But it was amazing to see because, people who were there, who were 12 years old at that time, came to see us and told us about what happened on that day, on July 4th, 1944.
So they remember? They were present? That's amazing.
Someone saw his body, actually.
That's incredible.
A little 12-year-old girl at that time went into the town hall or peeped into the window and saw his body lying there. And,
wow.
And we actually talked to her through Keltoum. We were able to talk to her.
How'd that make you feel?
Story. Oh, my. It was quite an experience. It was. And I was so impressed with how grateful that little village was to him. And they've honored him ever since. They've put a plaque there for generations to come to be able to honor him. I wish my grandmother could have known this story.
Yeah.
She just got a telegram saying that he had been killed.
Wow.
She never knew what
happened.
No
other information, huh?
Never knew what happened to him. But if she could have known how well he was treated and how much he was respected, it would have meant so much to her.
Sometimes the media kind of portrays this message that the French and the Americans don't get along so great in modern times, but this seems to refute that somewhat.
Mm-hmm. This is our message. France will never forget. We will be eternally, grateful for the sacrifice. They left everything. They went to a faraway land, to deliver us from evil. And when you asked me to come and to accompany you to France, I said, of course, I will be there.
Yes.
It feels like sometimes we don't think enough about and reflect enough on what would have been the consequences were it not for these American heroes. And what would the situation of France and the rest of the world be like today?
Exactly.
And he was just an average young man. He was just caught up into the world war, and he thought he might like to fly. He didn't even know how to fly, but he thought he might like to, and he was just a patriot and wanted to serve his country and ended up giving his life for his country.
And I think even those young men, they understood the risk. They knew there was a good probability that they might not make it home, but they did the duty that they were called to do. And we all benefit from their sacrifice, no doubt about that. So on behalf of Mississippi and America, I certainly extend my respect and my gratitude to your family members for their ultimate sacrifice to provide us with the quality of life that we have today and the freedoms we enjoy today.
Yes.
We thank you for that.
If you ever have a chance to go to Normandy or any of the American cemeteries, it will really be a touching experience. we were there for when they lowered the flag in the afternoon and they played taps, and I don't think there was a dry eye on the grounds. It was very touching.
It's overwhelming to stand and look at all those white crosses as far as you can see.
Almost 10,000, yes.
10,000.
Yes.
Just amazing.
And not just, and we need to remember, it's not just in Normandy. Go to Belgium, go to Luxembourg, the Netherlands.
So it's important that we have facilities like this Armed Forces Museum to remember those that served and especially those who pay the ultimate price. But that on Memorial Day, we just take at least a day out of the year where we reflect upon their sacrifice and honor and recognize them.
That's true.
Does that have special meaning to you now, having been through this experience, traveling to France, and with your being, I guess, ceremoniously greeted as a result of your family member?
Yes. I've written several documents trying to compile all of these military documents and family documents, and just put them in a little book that I've shared with the libraries, the genealogy libraries in our local areas, just to try to preserve it, and so that our grandchildren can read and understand that they had a family member who was a hero.
Yeah, no doubt. And honestly, all of our students, it seems, in America should be aware of these sacrifices, and this should be taught in our schools. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I was able to go around and speak at several places after we got back from France, Rotary clubs and our churches and various places, and people were very interested in the story.
Yeah.
It really resonated with me.
Did most of that occur in Mississippi?
Yes.
And in Louisiana, Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
We did go to Baton Rouge.
I mean, the good news is, I think, in our neck of the woods in the country, we truly do respect those who serve in our armed forces, and especially those, again, who pay that ultimate price for our freedom. So that's good to hear, and I bet you were received very well.
They really enjoyed it. They appreciated the story.
That's awesome. Keltoon, Margaret, Barbara, thanks to you guys so much for joining us here on Middays. Enjoyed hearing the story, and once again, thanks for the service of your family member, and thanks for preserving that story and that history and being a beacon for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, we're coming right back in the Element Well studio. We got Tommy Lofton, director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum, up next. Stay with us.
This show was previously recorded.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're live today at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. We're pleased to welcome now Colonel Mark Prine, serves as Special Project and President of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum Board. Colonel, always good to see you, sir.
Good to see you as well. Welcome to Camp Shelby and welcome to the Armed Forces Museum.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be here. Brag about the facility, the museum all the time. What a fantastic asset it is for the great state of Mississippi, right here just south of Hattiesburg, the heart of Camp Shelby. I noticed through the doors there in the big meeting event room, you got something going on today.
We do. We have the annual Mississippi Memorial Day event that we have here that honors those who have lost their lives in service to our nation. And this year we're recognizing everyone, but paying special attention to Sam Dale, who was a lieutenant that was killed on July the 4th, 1944.
Wow. What particular theater was that?
He was in Europe. He was a fighter pilot and was shot down over France. And just a couple of years ago, the village in France that he was shot down over commemorated him with a plaque on their city hall. And our our special envoy to France, Miss Kel Rowland, who is from here in the Hattiesburg area, teaches at Southern Miss, will help coordinate all that. And she's speaking about that event, and some of Sam's relatives are here.
Well, that's awesome. That's very good. So you were telling me offline that you've been hosting a fair number of field trips here lately.
We probably had the busiest spring that we have seen in years here. Groups coming to Camp Shelby. We've always had school groups that would come down and go through the museum and visit the static displays that we have here. But we've begun to see a lot of the career and technical education programs beginning to come through. You know, we have a combat medic school here. And so they have that full setup to teach soldiers who are becoming medics. So the people who are involved in CTE programs to be going to the health sciences come down and are going through and using that program. We have a mechanics program here that takes people, give them additional skills, air conditioning, generator repair, that kind of stuff. So people who are interested in that, they're coming through and using those facilities. I was telling Alex earlier that we've had something we never had before. We had a field trip come down and spend the night with us. They came down from Plantersville Middle School. Shout out to them. Came down, spent the night with us, went to the Gulf Coast, stayed here on post again, and then used the facilities here at the museum for a tour before they went back home.
Wow. What kind of reaction do you get, especially from the school students, the first time they go through the museum here? What do you hear?
Most of them are just totally amazed at the number of people from Mississippi who have had such integral parts in our nation's history, all the way back to even before we were a state. And fascinated by that, and something that we kind of help point out to them is so many of them, you know, are in their mid to late teens, and we're talking about people who are just 4 or 5 years older than they are, who had such a phenomenal impact.
Well, I'll have to say that was my first reaction, honestly. Yes. I think that is fairly typical of anybody who tours it. It's from Mississippi for the first time. Just a lot of history and information that you just aren't aware of without touring the museum. And you guys do such a great job of preserving and curating and presenting all that.
Thank you. Yes, we are so excited, and we get such great support from here in the state because we have so many people who will identify someone and give us a heads up and say, hey, what about this? Or we'll have a municipality say, we found this information about this individual from our town. Can you help us with that? So we have a great staff who really helps hang on to those ideas, and as well as help expand on them. We're working on a project now. It's called Notable Mississippians.
Okay.
People who served in the military and then went and did something else. The list of we're a couple of hundred people now that did something after they left the military. You think of Elvis Presley, B.B. King, some of those, but notable athletes, Olympic gold medals winners, all those kind of things.
So served in our military.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
How important is it, Colonel, that we take a day off to recognize those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and just keep their history alive and just their service to our country in our minds?
Yeah, extremely important, because many of these young people who have made the ultimate sacrifice are in their late teens, they're in their early 20s, they're not married, they don't have children. And then as we're rapidly approaching the 80th anniversary of D-Day here, just a few weeks, and it's now their great nieces and nephews. It's now their nieces and nephews, people who never knew them, who are keeping their memories alive and helping us to preserve their memories and keeping them alive. So it's wonderful that we have that opportunity to do that, is to reach out. But it helps, even though we're profiling one person today, just to keep everyone that's that's lost their life in the service of our nation, just to remember them. So so many people have don't know them, don't know their stories, but by being able to reach out, just thinking about them as a group, that helps keep their memories alive.
Yeah. And with respect to World War II, we're seeing many of those brave warriors. They're up there in age. There are not many left with us today.
Not many at all. And now it's those family members. You and I have talked about COVID kind of did wonders to the museum world because people cleaned out their attics. And now those people from World War II, that their artifacts were passed along through family members, are now being able to come to light. So we're excited about that.
Yeah. But so how far back do we go as far as exhibits in the museum featuring Mississippians that fought for their country?
We go all the way back to Mississippi Territorial Militia, Thomas Hines, organizing it here. And, one of the very first things that he got the opportunity to do was to arrest the vice president, Aaron Burr.
Right.
Yeah, because Aaron Burr was going to set up his own kingdom in Louisiana, and so they arrested him. Yeah. So we're even beginning to work now to even go back before Europeans arrived here. So talking with Chief Ben and the Choctaw Nation to be able to catalog those events that they had, but even before Europeans got here.
Awesome. So I'm at the age where the Vietnam War is still so vivid in my memory. It was arguably the first conflict where we had live reports, honestly, on television every night. We had the MIA and KIA reports was part of the national news, which was about all we had back in those days. We had the three major networks featuring that. It's kind of shameful a bit, I think, Colonel, the way many of those soldiers were treated when they returned to the country that sent them off to war. They were just asked to do a job, and they did it. The attitude's changed toward that, has it not?
It has. It really has. We're seeing more and more Vietnam veterans who are now coming forward and wanting to tell their story, what happened with them, what happened with the units they were assigned with. We were here I guess a couple of weeks ago, had a group of Seabees who were Vietnam Air Service members from down on the coast. They were having a reunion, came up, and we had a group of junior ROTC students here as well, and they were able to share and talk about their experiences with those. And it was phenomenal. So we're seeing more and more of the Vietnam era folks coming forward with artifacts and with their stories, and we're able to capture those, and we're excited about that.
What is so pointed, I think, is the incredible bond that exists, especially, not that it doesn't exist on those veterans of other wars, but that particular one seems a little unique, does it not?
It does, especially because you think about many of them would have done a one-year hitch.
Okay.
And then come home and been processed out of the military. So that tie with those individuals that they were assigned with is very, very strong.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably stronger than you find, with units that deployed for 4 or 5 years and a bunch of people rotated through kind of thing.
Okay.
But that 1 year that you were there with those people, you probably did basic training with them, went overseas, and then came home. That is really a tight.
And the horrors they witnessed,
yes.
A little bit unique, I think, of other wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think about, it had been in Korea, and with World War II, there was a front line, and you were moving forward, and then it was just a 360 warfare for those guys in Vietnam.
Yeah. And of course, I always like to point out, perhaps my favorite exhibit in the museum is the one that has the Huey.
Yes.
The Vietnam-era Huey.
Yes.
And the scene portrayed there just looks perfect from all the real photos that we've seen.
Right. The dust-off missions that those people were able to do to save lives, it's just phenomenal that what they were able to do. We used, everybody's seen MASH, and they know we used helicopters in Korea, but to perfect that using the Huey helicopters. And, the Hueys, we had a gentleman here that worked at our museum at one time that was part of the Huey development staff. And he said there was no engineering to that. It was go out there, you tried and see if it worked. If it worked, it didn't. If you didn't, you adjusted something else and kept going. And he said that's what made them such a successful aircraft. He said this was the very simplicity of how they worked.
An asset that I don't know that we could have prosecuted the war in Vietnam without the Hueys, honestly.
Exactly.
Not with that terrain.
Yeah, with that kind of terrain and with that kind of a lack of infrastructure in the country, we would not have been able to do anything as far as without the Hueys.
But that is uniquely American, it seems like, Colonel, that we our military are always thinking about the potential conflicts we may face, and we're always sort of tailoring our assets, our training for that.
Yeah, and adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
We were just talking earlier about the Seabees have identified to us what was very much called with Secretary Rumsfeld hillbilly armor. Have identified a D7 dozer that's sitting out there that's going to be coming to here that had hillbilly armor in the early part of the war.
Well, that's, again, part of American ingenuity, and we've had to overcome a lot, and we are certainly grateful to all those on Memorial Day, we remember, who pay that ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. And, again, congratulations, and thanks for all the great work you do. The museum is fantastic. Every Mississippian should visit it. I'm glad to hear about the uptick in the field trips.
Yes.
Honestly, it'd be great if we could get every student in the state of Mississippi to tour this museum.
I agree. When you're headed for the beach this summer, we're only 5 miles off of Highway 49, 98, or 59, so come on.
Appreciate it, Colonel. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Folks, we're stepping aside, coming right back. The Element Well studio relocated to the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby. Stay with us.
This show was previously recorded.
At Key Construction.
Show was previously recorded.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
South to the land of the pines, I'm thumbing my way into North Carolina, staring up the road and pray to God I see headlights.
Welcome back, everyone. I just heard on the C Spire text line, just heard a few bits of highways getting renovated and heard Brad mention Highway 7 in Lafayette County, so thought he might be discussing state highways. Thanks for his name. I know Fred Shanks has also pushed for this. This is Marilyn from Brandon. Appreciate you sending us a note there. Marilyn says, hi, Gerard, Ole Miss. I got you. Ben from Madison says, 100% agree with you on the procurement process. I'm absolutely 100% committed to that idea, which is until we fix the procurement process in the city of Jackson, we can't fix the city of Jackson. That, in fact, I would argue that all of the problems that exist in the city of Jackson emanated from the corruption in the procurement process. Now, Rhino, you were just showing me the trash people, right, and where they're located.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine that a 40-year-old, relatively small trash company out of New Orleans, Richard's Disposal, could really offer the economies of scale that someone like, say, Waste Management could offer.
Yeah. But
there was a knockdown, drag-out fight for a better part of a year over giving the contract to Richard's Disposal to pick up trash in Jackson.
Yep, absolutely. What would be your opinion if they stepped in on the contract? If they stepped in, yeah, I'm just trying to read it here. The contract, a stipulation that it be a Mississippi-based company gets preferential treatment. Yeah, I can actually share a personal account of that, a personal story. It's when Kirk Fordyce was the governor. And as a Mississippi-based company, I was losing to out-of-state companies and frustrated by it. And by the way, it wasn't that I was afraid to compete with them. It's because they saw Mississippi as white space, and they dumped, literally in Mississippi, to pump their volume up so they get lower pricing in the states where they made a bunch of money. That happens. It's just called dumping. And so I went to personally, got an appointment with Governor Fordyce. And you know what he says? No, Gerard, I don't agree with that, because if we gave preferential treatment to vendors in state over vendors from out of state, they do the same to our vendors in state trying to sell in those states. He was actually right. It's not a bad point. And in Mississippi, we need the bigger states more than they need us. That's just a fact. And I didn't want that retribution. And as I expanded my company into other states, okay, Governor, I get it. So he said that right. Didn't even have to think about it right off the bat. That was his opinion. Also, Representative Jody Steverson sent us a report. This is out of Newsweek, showing gas tax increases across 7 states that went into effect yesterday: Virginia, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado, and California, which was already crazy high. So appreciate that, Representative Steverson. I'm just curious. I'm not sure if you're still listening. Would you support the increase in the fuel tax here in the state of Mississippi? This is a very controversial issue, Rhino, as you know. I mean, there are very strong opinions on both sides of that. And as you've noted, Brad White, the executive director, he actually doesn't support that. Well, he hasn't come out and said, I would support that. He's rather said, you know what, I'm reading the tea leaves here. I don't think there's a will to get that done. But, guys, we do need more money, if you want better roads and bridges, especially a recurring revenue stream for maintenance that we can pull down more federal money, why don't we look at some of these, as he described them, unobligated funds? That just simply means they go to the general fund and the legislature appropriates them. What he's suggesting is, why don't we just pass law that would take, using some formula, that would take some portion of, let's say, the use taxes that come in. Just the same way the lottery works, the same sort of model, same sort of structure. Just take a piece that's automatically allocated to the Department of Transportation, does not require annual appropriation. Now, we also should point out that because we have accumulated a fair amount of cash through surpluses generated in the state of Mississippi, that the legislature did see fit the last, 2-3 years, to transfer money, essentially a balance sheet transfer, money that was held in accounts to the Department of Transportation. I mean, that's something that I've seen the Lieutenant Governor point out, and the Speaker of the House as well point out that, yeah, we did actually transfer money to the Department of Transportation. That wasn't appropriating, if you will, from current year revenues. It was just taking money held and stored in balance sheet accounts. There's other funds, essentially, that they just passed law or included in law in the appropriations bill to transfer. So it's a little different than taking revenue coming in on an annual basis and then appropriating that. These were just transfers of monies held in other accounts, which I think was actually a good move. Thomas in Greenwood, of course, is always an aggrieved person, wants to know if Brad cut the waste, Auditor Shad found. How do you know that that's legitimate, though, Thomas? Stay safe and God bless everyone.
This show was previously recorded.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.